Bonsoir à tous et à toutes et bienvenue à cette cérémonie virtuelle, la remise du Prix littéraire des ambassadeurs de la francophonie en Irlande 2021. Good evening everyone and welcome to this very special event, the award ceremony for the Literary Prize of the Ambassadors of the Francophonie in Ireland 2021. Le prix a été fondé par les ambassadeurs en 2016 et vise à souligner le rôle du français comme langue des idées et des valeurs de la francophonie. The prize was established in 2016 and aims to promote the role of the French language as a vehicle for the circulation of ideas and culture throughout the French-speaking world, throughout la francophonie. My name's Sinead Mulcahy. I'm the Director of Literature Ireland, an organisation which promotes Irish literature across the world, primarily in translation. Literature Ireland a pour mission d'assurer la promotion de la littérature irlandaise à travers le monde. We're proud to work in partnership with the 26 ambassadors of the Francophonie countries in Ireland and to promote the values of the Francophonie, these key values of cultural and linguistic diversity, democracy and human rights, education and research, sustainable development, and solidarity. This year, the prize is being awarded to Claire Keegan for her book, Ce genre de petites, translated into French by Jacqueline Odin and published in Paris by Édition Sabine Westpiezer. Félicitations. Claire Keegan's the author of 4 books, 2 collections of short stories, Antarctica and Walk the Blue Fields, a novella Foster, and now Small Things Like These, Ce genre de petites. Literature Ireland's partnership with the prize normally awards a residential bursary to the translator of the winning work. Normalement, notre partenariat avec ce prix offre une bourse résidentielle en Irlande au traducteur ou traductrice gagnant. Dans ce cas, la traductrice Jacqueline Odin. Malheureusement, cette année, avec la pandémie, c'est pas possible d'inviter Jacqueline tout de suite. Donc, en partenariat avec les 26 ambassadeurs, Literature Ireland et les ambassadeurs offriront un prix de 1 000 €. Congratulations, Jacqueline. Literature Ireland looks forward to welcoming you to Ireland at some stage in the future. So now let's move on to the important business of the evening. The award ceremony will run as follows. In a few moments, the Ambassador of Greece to Ireland, Son Excellence, Madame Ekaterina Simopoulou, will make the presentation to Claire and to Jacqueline. I'll then invite Sabine Westpiezer, the editor, to say a few words, and we'll then pass on to Clíona Ní Riordáin, who will interview Claire and Jacqueline. After that, we'll have some words of congratulations from a number of the ambassadors who've been so active in the jury and in making this prize. So, j'invite maintenant l'ambassadeur de la Grèce en Irlande, Son Excellence, Madame Ekaterina Simopoulou, à prendre la parole et à remettre le prix.
Merci. Bonsoir à tous, à toutes. Chers lauréates, chers panélistes, chers collègues, chers amis de la francophonie, mesdames et messieurs, chère Sinead, je te remercie pour ta présentation et pour ton appui et celui de Literature Ireland à l'institution qu'est le Prix littéraire des ambassadeurs de la francophonie en Irlande. I'm going to speak also in English for our non-French speaking friends, so I will translate after each paragraph. Dear Sinead, I would like to thank you for the presentation that you've just made and for your support, as well as of that of the Literature Ireland to the institution that it is the Prix littéraire des ambassadeurs de la francophonie in Ireland. C'est un honneur exceptionnel pour moi, en tant que l'ambassadrice de Grèce, de présenter le Prix littéraire des ambassadeurs de la francophonie en Irlande pour l'année 2021. C'est un prix qui vise à souligner le rôle de la littérature française comme véhicule des valeurs de la francophonie en Irlande. Et personnellement, je crois que c'est l'événement le plus stimulant parmi ceux du Festival de la francophonie pour la raison additionnelle que la langue française est par excellence l'instrument de l'expression littéraire. It is an exceptional honor for me as Ambassador of Greece in Ireland to present this award for 2021. Well, this is a very important award because it underlines the role of the French literature as a vehicle of the values of the Francophonie in Ireland. And I believe that this is one of the most challenging events among the events of the Festival of the Francophonie, for the additional reason that, well, we have to admit it, the French language is above everything the instrument to express literature. Chaque année, comme Sinéad a mentionné, depuis 2016, les 26 ambassadeurs des pays de l'Organisation de la Francophonie en Irlande, le département des affaires étrangères irlandais, choisissent un livre d'écrivain irlandais récemment traduit en français pour attribuer le prix littéraire. Je vous assure que ce n'est pas du tout facile parce que chaque fois, on a l'embarras du choix parmi un nombre d'ouvrages exceptionnels. As Sinéad has mentioned before, every year since 2016, the 26 ambassadors of the countries of the Organization of the Francophonie in Ireland and the Department of Foreign Affairs of Ireland choose a book written by an Irish author, which was recently translated into French, and we award this prize. I must assure you that this is nothing easy to do because we have a lot of excellent books to choose among. Cette année, le jury a choisi le livre de Claire Keegan, une des plus importantes écrivaines irlandaises de sa génération, traduite en français par Jacqueline Odin sous le titre « Ce genre de petites choses », qui reflète actuellement la valeur de la diversité linguistique et culturelle, du respect des droits de l'homme et de la solidarité, qui sont des valeurs défendues par la francophonie. This year, the jury has chosen a very important book, a book written by Claire Keegan, who is one of the most important Irish authors of her generation, and which has been translated into French by Jacqueline Odin, and has the title Sont, genre de petites choses. This is an important book because it reflects the value of the very important values of the Francophonie, because the Francophonie has underneath the values of solidarity and of the rights, of the human rights. And these are the values that the Francophonie bring also in Ireland. Ce livre traite d'un sujet qui, jusqu'aujourd'hui, du point de vue social et humanitaire, est très justement traité de scandale et qui a laissé son empreinte sur plusieurs générations. C'est le scandale infâme de l'exploitation des mères célibataires par des sœurs catholiques. Well, this is a book about a subject which is a difficult subject, actually. It is a subject that it is treated as a scandal from the point of view of the social or humanitarian point of view. It is a scandal that has left its mark on various generations. It is an infamous scandal of the exploitation of the single mothers by the sœurs catholiques. Il est à noter que pour la première fois, on a choisi un livre dont la traduction a été publiée avant d'apparaître en langue originale, prévue pour septembre 2021. So, we have to know that this year we have chosen a book that for the first time, it's been, we have read the translation before seeing the actual book in the original language, which is planned to be in September 2021. On a également introduit une deuxième nouveauté en attribuant pour la première fois un prix pour la traduction à la traductrice Jacqueline Odin pour son travail exceptionnel. For the first time also, we have decided to give a prize to the translator, an excellent translator, Jacqueline Odin, for its exceptional work, for her exceptional work. Le prix est attribué dans le cadre du Festival annuel de la Francophonie en partenariat avec Literature Ireland et l'Alliance française de Dublin, que nous remercions pour leur contribution précieuse. This award is within the Festival of la Francophonie that takes place every year in Ireland, and it is in cooperation with Literature Ireland and l'Alliance française, of course, which we thank very much for their contribution. Chers lauréates, permettez-moi de vous féliciter aussi de la part du jury. Dear prize winners, allow me to congratulate you on behalf of the jury. Ms. Keegan, allow me to present you with the 1,500 Euro Literary Award 2021 of Ireland Francophonie Ambassadors for your outstanding ce genre de petites choses. Ms. Jacqueline Odin, allow me to present you with the 1,000 Euro Literary Award 2021 of Ireland Francophonie Ambassadors for your remarkable translation of ce genre de petites choses. Je vous remercie et je vous félicite.
And now I'll call on Claire Keegan to say some words of acceptance.
Thank you very much, Sinead. Sorry, I was just waiting for the screen to change, but I'm just delighted. Really, I'm just thrilled to receive this prize, and thank you so much, Ambassador Simulpulo. It's a huge honor, and especially since the award is also shared by the translator, and I'm sure Jacqueline Odin has done a wonderful job. My only worry now is that the original may not live up to the translation, but I'm just delighted to accept it, and thank you so much for your time and for even thinking of putting this little book on the shortlist. Was a huge honor. So to be taking the prize and for this little novel to be seen in this light really is thrilling for me, and I'm just delighted. So thank you so much, and thank you to Literature Ireland, and of course to Sabine, my publisher, and to everyone who has had anything to do with the publication of this book over there in France. I'm so pleased and very grateful. Maybe I could hand over now to Jacqueline Odin, who might like to say a few words about the book or the translation.
Thank you very much, Claire. I'm delighted to, I'm delighted that we can share this prize indeed, and it's a huge reward for me. And of course, I am very happy to accept it. And I would like to say thank you to everyone as well, to Sabine, and of course to you, Claire, and to Sinead also at Literature Ireland, and hopefully we'll celebrate all together later in Ireland sometime. And yeah, thank you very much. It's really important also for translators and translations in general, I think, for them to be more visible. So I really appreciate this prize, this beautiful award. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I'd now like to call on Sabine Westpiezer from Édition Sabine Westpiezer to say a few words about the prize. Thank you, Sabine.
Bonjour à tous. Bonjour à tous. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much. It's a pleasure and an honor to get this prize, especially given by Mrs. Ambassador of Greece. Greece is the land of poetry and tragedy, and so it's le berceau, you would say, is the cradle of literature. So we are especially honored about that, and because we are working together for 10 years almost with Claire and Jacqueline, and published four books together. And this one is very special because Claire decided that she would give it to her French publisher first. So thank you for that, Claire. And of course, it's a lot of fun and honor to be the first all over the world to publish such a book. And I must confess, I'm very happy because the response here in France is very good. We already sold more than 20,000 copies. Claire got huge reviews and articles and radio programs. So it's really a great pleasure from the beginning and to this particular evening. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sabine. That's an extraordinary figure, 20,000 copies already. That's wonderful. I'd just like to say to our audience that if you have any questions, don't forget that you can ask them using the chat function, and we will take questions at the end of the interview with Claire and Jacqueline. Donc, vous, les spectateurs, vous avez la possibilité de poser des questions à Claire dans le chat. Elle répondra à la fin de l'interview, et Jacqueline aussi. I'd now like to invite Professor Clíona Ní Riordáin to interview Claire in the first instance, and then Jacqueline. And just to give you a little bit of a background for those of you who don't know Clíona, Clíona Ní Riordáin est professeure des universités à la Sorbonne Nouvelle, où elle enseigne la traduction et la littérature. Elle est par ailleurs traductrice et critique littéraire. So Clíona Ní Riordáin is a professor at the Sorbonne Nouvelle. She teaches translation and literature, and she's also a critic and a translator herself. So je passe la parole. I now pass the floor over to Professor Clíona Ní Riordáin.
Thank you very much, Sinead. And it's a great honor to be involved in this ceremony tonight and to speak to one of my favorite authors, Claire Keegan. Claire, when we open the novel in English, we see that it's dedicated to the women and children who suffered time in the Magdalen laundries. And in the French version, I think it even sounds a bit more solemn because Jacqueline has translated it as « Cette histoire est dédiée aux femmes et aux enfants qui ont subi la claustration dans les blanchisseries de Magdalen en Irlande ». Where did this idea for the story about the Magdalen laundries come to you from, Claire?
Hello, Clíona. Well, I'm not quite sure where stories come from ever. It's more like an itch than something articulate. I think if we knew where stories come from, we'd all be able to go there when we don't know what to write. But I suppose the most extraordinary thing that happened in my lifetime was the collapse of the Catholic Church over here. Not the Catholic faith, because I don't know too many people who actually took it literally. But I mean the power of the church. To see the power of the church collapse is the most extraordinary change I've seen in my lifetime here. So when the Ferns report came out, which investigated the clerical abuses, I was coming from UCC, University College Cork, driving back to Wexford one morning, and I stopped for breakfast. And the Saturday paper, the Irish Times, was there, and I read a full article on, there was a huge spread on the Ferns report and some quotations from some of the victims. And one man was asked, what was the worst thing? And his answer was, there were many worst things. which I found kind of an astounding answer, and it put me in mind of Primo Levi, that kind of quiet language about what is horrible. And so he then went on to say that he was once put into a shed and the coalman found him. And that just stayed with me. And I started off the story by writing it from the point of view of the coalman's son, who went with him and found the boy there. And it was just the story of the boy being made to put in the coal while the other boy was in there. His father making him do that, and then closing the door and carrying on. And I found that really interesting, the silence on top of the silences that are here, and an intricate part of Irish culture. And so the story wouldn't leave me alone. And I had to kind of understand more thoroughly what it would be like to be the coalman and have that happen to me, and what would I do with it? What do you do with the knowledge that you've taken on, which you can't take it out of you? And so that's really where it came from. I started expanding it then from Bill Furlong's point of view, and I wound up with a coalman who had 5 daughters and a wife and a business. So I had all of that to manage.
But it's interesting because you change the gender perspective, and you tell the story of the Magdalen laundries from the perception of this coalman, this Bill Furlong. And I think you create an extremely empathetic character. But why did you want to tell it from his perspective? Why not tell the story of one of the women who had suffered, for instance?
Well, I think I would be less interested in doing that because she's in the middle of it and can't see. She has no choice. All she's doing is surviving. I'm not saying that can't be interesting, but she's absolutely stuck, and all she can do is either survive or escape, much as a prisoner would. So you can't really see the society because she's stuck in a laundry. And I think a novel is a social work. It's about the society we live in. And she would not have been free to kind of explore that. And I'm more interested in what we do with our freedoms, perhaps, than I am with what we do when we don't have the freedom to choose something. And I suppose the other thing I wanted to, looking back now, maybe the other thing I wanted to explore was, why did people say nothing? And I like to think that the book answers or addresses why people said and did nothing.
One of the things that you do at the end of the book is you have a note on the text where you explain the history of the Magdalen laundries in a very short summary, but you also quote an excerpt from the Proclamation of the Republic, where you, put a spotlight on the fact that the proclamation in 1916 said the people who were fighting for Irish freedom or wanted to set up an Irish Republic wanted to cherish all of the children of the nation equally. Why did you want to include that historical, almost commentary?
I think you can measure a society's humanity by how they treat their children, by the laws around children, by how children are protected and treated. And of course, then, you're going to have good families, you're going to have a better society, you're going to have finer schools, you're going to have finer manners. Everything will work better if children are minded. And Chekhov wrote a lot about this too, and I'm really interested in his stories and the stories of the children in those texts. But it's strange that the Republic of Ireland, after what's in our proclamation, became known as a society, as a country, became famous for the sexual abuse of children. And I suppose this is my response to that. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think we are known all over the world for a kind of sexual perversion within our Catholicism, which isn't expressed the way it seems to me the Italians or the Spanish or the French with a Catholic background express theirs. It's a different type of Catholicism where affection is not part of sexuality. And it's led to this. And then I suppose this is my response to that.
And affection and love and tenderness, I think, form a kernel at the heart of Bill Furlong's life. You show how Bill Furlong himself, whose mother could have ended up in one of these Magdalen laundries, was taken in and was treated with care and affection. And you show that in his relationship with his own family and his own daughters.
Yes, I think he was loved.
And this love is perhaps demonstrated in these little things that you illustrate, such as him buying patent shoes for his wife, or the care and pride that he has in his daughters. It's more, it's a shown love rather than a told love, perhaps.
Yes, I don't know that there is any love which isn't shown.
But he's not effusive, and his wife is not effusive in their declarations of love. And I wonder, did you feel that it would have been unconvincing to portray a love like that in the Ireland of the 80s?
I suppose I would be more inclined to say that I'd be disinclined to express it that way, because it would seem to me both implausible and maybe tasteless. I don't know that love is effusive on a daily basis. I think we can go a bit mad when we first fall in love, and usually look back on that with some embarrassment, I would say. But I think a coal man, even now in 2021, with 5 daughters and a full-time job, who's pretty much a workaholic, wouldn't be effusive about his love.
You also build up a wonderful picture, I think, of the materiality of life in Ireland in the 1980s. You give us, I suppose, socio-historical detail about factory closures, for instance. You talk about the type of dinners that people are interested in. In a sense, I think what you're doing is it's not a Dutch interior that you're painting, but it's an Irish interior.
Well, that's a lovely thing to say. I didn't think of it that way. But yes, I remember the 80s as a very specific time. It was, it was a time of hard drinking, of high unemployment. And I kind of put that with bad weather, which seemed appropriate for my coal man to keep him busy. And of course, that kept me busy and made my story longer. But yes, I suppose I wanted to make all of those facts kind of magnetic towards each other, so that they would cohere, and then I would get coherent prose. One of my least favorite types of writing is cryptic prose. I like what is to be there, to kind of be clearly there, and then that the author backs off and leaves it to the reader to put it all together. And that, for me, is the pleasure of reading. I don't want the author to analyze the text. I want the reader to analyze the text, because that is the pleasure of reading, of putting it all together, and having the author back away and kind of go off into that invisible place. So that is what I'm always trying to do, and to do it as well as I possibly can, no matter what I'm writing.
One of the interesting words you employed there was the word novel, because I know it's about 70 odd pages. And I know when Foster was published as a standalone story, one of the things that you said was that it was a long short story. It was definitely not a novella. So this is definitely a novel, is it?
I think this is a short novel, yes, because it's a social document. It's not the story of an individual. Foster was a first-person point of view. It was told entirely in one point of view in a house with two people, and it was very much enclosed. This is a man who is going around like the Cyclops, really, and reporting on the town and the news that's kind of coming and going across the river. And I think that he is reporting on the society he lives in, rather than being somebody who is just enclosed in his little world. He's actually having a sniff of what is out there in the world and reporting back to us. So I see this as a short novel rather than a long story. But for me, I mean, in the proof I have here, I think we're up to 120 pages for this. So I think it might have been 70 pages in manuscript form. Okay. I want to say it's over 20,000 words, and that maybe Foster was about 13,000. But maybe, you know, maybe saying a long short story really is a pretentious thing to say. To me, because I teach, I have kind of delineations in my mind as to how things differ and the level of intensity and the length of things. But really, it doesn't matter what you call something. I don't think the genre is here or there. It's the writing itself is, I mean, you could argue that Ulysses is not a novel. I'm not sure that it is a novel. I mean, James Joyce's Ulysses. And I think it doesn't really matter what you call it. I don't mind if people call it a story.
One of the other things that you suggest by referring to Cyclops is that there's almost a kind of a mythological or a fable-like element to it. And I know that was one of the things that was raised in the French press. They talked about it being a fable, or they talked about it being a morality story, comparing it to Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. Did you have Charles Dickens and the Christmas Carol because of the Christmas setting? Was that in the back of your mind when you were writing?
No, I haven't read Dickens. I'm embarrassed to say, but I was just thinking about that yesterday. I haven't read Dickens. I was listening to an interview with David Mitchell talking about how A Tale of Two Cities is just an extraordinary novel. And, you know, I've been trying to convince myself or trying to get to Dickens, and I haven't got there. It's almost like somebody I'm saving for my old age, but I might not get to be old, you know, so I better get on to it. But I couldn't have had Dickens in my mind because I haven't read him, but again, that's nothing but complimentary to me. Really, I like what is fable-like. I like what feels timeless. I like to feel the passage of time and the nights getting dark and the mornings getting bright. I love that feeling of the passage of time. It makes me feel comfortable. And I think it's one of the things which makes, I'm sure Jacqueline will be far more articulate about this than I, but one of the things which makes translation possible is that everybody knows what a day is.
And
everybody knows what time is. And the day is the same in every part of the world, its length. And no matter how things have changed and the speed, you know, we have now with doing things or going places, the fact is that it still takes a minute for a minute to pass, and that we all know that someday will be our last. And I think that that is what allows fiction to move us when it is translated well, because we all have that shared experience of knowing what a day is and what a season is.
Well, can I take that prompt and ask you to read the opening chapter where
yes,
you set the scene and the season so well?
Of course, and thank you. In October, there were yellow trees. Then the clocks went back the hour, and the long November winds came in and blew and stripped the trees bare. In the town of New Ross, chimneys threw out smoke, which fell away and drifted off in hairy, drawn-out strings before dispersing along the quays. And soon the river, dark as stout, swelled up with rain. The people, for the most part, unhappily endure the weather, shopkeepers and tradesmen, men and women in the post office and the dole queue, the mart, the coffee shop and supermarket, the bingo hall, the pubs and the chipper all commented in their own ways on the cold and what rain had fallen, asking what was in it and could there be something in it, for who could believe that there again was another raw cold day. Children pulled their hoods up before facing out to school, while their mothers, so used now to ducking their heads and running to the clothesline, or hardly daring to hang anything out at all, had little faith in getting so much as a shirt dry before evening. And then the nights came on, and the frosts took hold again, and blades of cold slid under doors and cut the knees off those who still knelt to say the rosary. Down in the yard, built Furlong, the coal and timber merchant, rubbed his hands, saying if things carried on as they were, they would soon need a new set of tires for the lorry. She's on the road every hour of the day, he told the men. We could soon be on the rims. And it was true. Hardly had one customer left the yard before another arrived, fresh on their heels, or the phone rang, with almost everyone saying they wanted the delivery soon, or now, that next week wouldn't do. Furlong sold turf, coal, anthracite, slack and logs. These were ordered by the hundredweight, the half hundredweight, or the full ton or lorry load. He also sold bales of briquettes, kindling and bottled gas. The coal was the dirtiest work and had in winter to be collected monthly off the quays. 2 full days it took for the men to collect, carry, sort and weigh it all out back in the yard. Meanwhile, the Polish and Russian boatmen were a novelty going about town in their fur caps and long buttoned coats with hardly a word of English. During busy times like these, Furlong made most of the deliveries himself, leaving the yardmen to bag up the next orders and cut and split the loads of felled trees the farmers brought in. Through the mornings, the saws and shovels could be heard going hard at it. But when the Angelus bell rang at noon, the men laid down their tools, washed the black off their hands, and went round to Keogh's, where they were fed hot dinners with soup and fish and chips on Fridays. The empty sack cannot stand, Mrs. Keogh liked to say, standing behind her new buffet counter, slicing up the meat and dishing out the veg and mash with her long metal spoons. Gladly, the men sat down to thaw out and eat their fill before having a smoke and facing back out into the cold again.
Thank you very much, Claire. That was wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Je me tourne maintenant vers Jacqueline Odin et je vais vous demander de lire le premier chapitre en français.
Merci beaucoup. En octobre, il y eut des arbres jaunes. Puis les pendules reculèrent d'1 heure et les vents de novembre arrivèrent et soufflèrent, perpétuels, et dépouillèrent les arbres. Dans la ville de New Ross, les cheminées crachaient de la fumée qui retombait et flottait en mèches échevelées, étirées, avant de se dissiper le long des quais. Et bientôt la rivière, aussi sombre que de la bière brune, se gonfla de pluie. Les gens, pour la plupart, enduraient les intempéries avec contrariété. Les commerçants et les artisans, les hommes et les femmes au bureau de poste et dans la file d'attente du chômage, sur le marché aux bestiaux, à la cafétéria et au supermarché, dans la salle de bingo, dans les pubs, à la friterie, commentaient tous à leur manière le froid et la quantité de pluie qui était tombée, demandant ce que ça signifiait et s'il pouvait y avoir un présage là-dedans, car qui pouvait croire que c'était pour la énième fois une journée glaciale? Les enfants relevaient leur capuche avant de partir pour l'école, tandis que leurs mères, si habituées maintenant à baisser la tête et à se précipiter vers la corde à linge, ou osant à peine étendre la moindre lessive dehors, avaient peu d'espoir de réussir à faire sécher ne serait-ce qu'une chemise avant le soir. Puis la nuit s'installait et le gel reprenait, et les lames du froid se glissaient sous les portes, et coupait les genoux des rares qui s'agenouillaient encore pour dire le chapelet. Bill Furlong, propriétaire du dépôt de bois et de charbon, se frotta les mains, disant que si les choses continuaient comme cela, ils auraient bientôt besoin d'un nouveau train de pneus pour la camionnette. « Elle est sur la route la journée entière, dit-il. Nous ne tarderons pas à rouler sur les jantes. » Et c'était vrai. Dès qu'un client sortait du dépôt, un autre entrait immédiatement, ou le téléphone sonnait pour la commande suivante. Presque tous disant qu'ils voulaient la livraison sur le champ ou sous peu, que la semaine d'après ne conviendrait pas. Furlong vendait du charbon, de la tourbe, de l'anthracite, du poussier et des bûches. Il fournissait ses combustibles au poids, à raison de 50 ou de 100 kilos, d'une tonne ou d'une pleine camionnette. Il vendait aussi des paquets de briquettes et de petits bois, ainsi que des bouteilles de gaz. Le charbon était le travail le plus salissant, et en hiver, il fallait s'approvisionner tous les mois sur les quais. 2 journées complètes étaient nécessaires aux hommes pour aller le chercher, le transporter, le trier et le peser de retour au dépôt. Pendant ce temps, d'insolites bateliers polonais et russes parcouraient la ville dans leurs bonnets de fourrure et leurs longs manteaux boutonnés, sans presque parler un mot d'anglais. Durant les périodes chargées comme celle-ci, Furlong faisait la majorité des livraisons lui-même et laissait les ouvriers du dépôt ensacher les commandes suivantes, couper et fendre les cargaisons d'arbres tombés que les fermiers apportaient. Tout au long de la matinée, le bruit des scies et des pelles assidus retentissait. Mais lorsque l'Angélus sonnait, à midi, les hommes déposaient leurs outils, lavaient leurs mains noircies et allaient chez Keogh, où ils trouvaient des repas chauds avec de la soupe et du fish and chips le vendredi. Un sac vide ne tient pas droit, aimait à dire Mrs. Keogh, debout derrière son présentoir neuf, servant les légumes et la purée à l'aide de ses longues cuillères en métal. Avec plaisir, les hommes s'asseyaient pour se réchauffer et apaiser leur faim, avant de fumer une cigarette et de retourner affronter le froid.
Merci beaucoup, Jacqueline. Jacqueline, this is the 4th book of Claire Keegan's that you've translated. What does it mean to you as Claire's translator to win this award?
Je suis extrêmement ravie, je suis enchantée. Notre travail effectivement prend vraiment place dans le temps, sur il y a une vraie durée. Et pour moi, c'est très important. Je suis très, très heureuse de ce partage et des échanges que je peux avoir avec Claire qui sont toujours très enrichissants. Et je suis heureuse d'être sa voix française en quelque sorte.
So Jacqueline says that she is delighted to win this translation prize, that she has a real relationship with Claire which has evolved in time, and that she's always happy to translate her work because the exchanges are enriching, and that she's delighted to be Claire's voice in French. Et on a vu, Jacqueline, récemment, l'importance qu'a suscité l'identité du traducteur. Je parle de l'histoire de la traductrice de Emma de Gorman. Est-ce que vous sentez que vous aviez une empathie particulière pour l'œuvre de Claire? Est-ce que ça vous aide à traduire?
Oui, bien sûr, c'est très important pour moi. Déjà, je pense, une relation particulière à l'Irlande en tant que pays. Je m'y suis toujours sentie extrêmement à l'aise chez moi dès la première fois où j'y ai séjourné. Et concernant l'œuvre de Claire spécifiquement, je l'ai entendue lire alors que nous résidions toutes les deux au Tarrant Guthrie Center d'Anna McCarrig, et sa voix a toujours été présente et continue de l'être maintenant que je traduis. Et voilà, c'est quelque chose qui me guide. Et les autres choses qui sont très importantes pour moi, c'est la qualité de son écriture, sa densité, sa concision et tous les sous-entendus que je m'efforce de rendre sans jamais expliquer, bien sûr, en essayant de rester toujours dans cette même densité et profondeur de langue.
So I was asking Jacqueline about her position as Claire's translator, given that light was shed on the relationship between the translator and of Amanda Gorman's poetry recently. I asked Jacqueline if she felt a particular empathy with Claire's work. And Jacqueline said that she always felt particularly at ease in Ireland, that from the first time she went to Ireland, it felt like home. And that she heard Claire read her work for the first time when both Claire and Jacqueline were residents in the Tyrone Guthrie Centre in Annaghmakerrig, and that she can hear Claire's voice when she's translating, and that she loves the quality, the density, and the concision of her writing, and the way that Claire is able to explain things in a very elusive manner, and that she enjoys working to bring that voice into French. So Jacqueline, when the pandemic is over, you'll be coming to Ireland. And do you think that this will inform the rest of the translations that you will do of Claire?
Oui, certainement. J'espère en tout cas que ce sera possible. Et bien sûr, oui, chaque nouveau séjour, chaque nouvelle rencontre continue de m'apporter des choses. Oui, on continue d'enrichir mon travail.
So Jacqueline says that each new trip to Ireland brings new things to enrich her relationship, both with Claire's work and with Ireland in general. And she looks forward to being able to travel there again. Merci beaucoup, Jacqueline. Thank you very much, Claire. And I'll hand over to Sinead.
Merci Clíona, Jacqueline et bien sûr Claire for cette interview fascinant. Thank you very much for that fascinating interview, and thank you Clíona for conducting it. We have a few questions on the chat. The first one is a note of congratulations to you, Claire, and to you, Jacqueline. And it says, it's not really a question, but it's a note of congratulations. Best congratulations to Claire Keegan and Jacqueline Odin on this award from John McHugh and all on Achill Island. So I remember a story that Claire wrote, Set on Achill Island. So I think there must be friends there. I can see you smiling, Jacqueline. That means you've translated the story, of course, and you remember it too. There's a question from Mary O'Brien to Claire. Who are your favorite writers?
My favorite writers are probably Chekhov and McGahern, Emily Dickinson, Flannery O'Connor, Borges, Turgenev, Tolstoy, Carver, Elizabeth Bishop, Hardy, Austen, Lawrence.
All the greats.
Yeah, I really like Ishiguro's work as well, and Pat Barker. I realize I'm very interested in what people do with work. I'm interested in reading about how work defines us and how we work and how we hide behind it as well sometimes. So I also love Fitzgerald, and I read a lot of poetry in my 20s. So it's something I keep going back to, and I really like Louis MacNeice. I think Louis MacNeice is probably my favorite Irish poet. I think he's just marvelous. And one of the things he says is make-believe dies hard. And I think it's a lovely thing to remember, because it's something that informs every reader, because there's so much of the imagination going on for everyone. And it just seems to me that is what we take with us when we go off with a book, our make-believe.
Thank you. There's a question from Michael Kennedy to Jacqueline. And the question is, Jacqueline, since you're a writer yourself, do you think that informs your translation in any way, your translation work? Does it sensitize you?
Sorry, Sinead, I didn't get the very beginning of your sentence.
So the question is, because you are a writer yourself, does that change the way you translate? Does it sensitize you in some extra way?
No, actually, I'm only a literary translator. I don't write except, well, maybe letters, but that's all now. So
the next question is from John O'Brien, and his question is to Claire, and he says, Claire, you mentioned the word social document in relation to this particular book. Do you plan to write other books which have a social document dimension?
I think most of the things I've written have some value or some connection to a society, and could be seen as social documents. I mean, Eliot talks about how the artist is a critic of their society. So if you have somebody living in the world, you have somebody living in the society. Even if you have somebody who goes off to live on a deserted island, there's something about society which made him go off and do that. And so I don't know that there's any getting away from it if you live in the world. Otherwise, you'd be left with a solipsist who, I suppose, gets everything delivered by the internet, you know, and gets his shopping delivered online, probably a bit like we are now, without Zoom. So it's never my intention to go off and do that, but I do think that that's what literature is. It is a response to living in the world with others and without others, and you're bound, I think, if it's thoughtful prose, to wind up saying something about the society.
Thank you. Well, maintenant, il ne reste à moi qu'à remercier de nouveau tous les ambassadeurs de la francophonie en Irlande qui ont créé ce prix très spécial et qui composent, qui contribuent dans un sens très réel, parce que ce sont eux qui participent au jury du prix. Donc, j'aimerais à ce point, at this point, I'd like to invite the ambassadors, some of the ambassadors of Francophonie, to say a few words of congratulations to you, Claire, and to you, Jacqueline. It's they who created this prize. It's a very important prize because it recognizes the importance of cultural exchange. It underlines the importance of the French language and of translators. Donc, j'appelle maintenant et je passe la parole aux ambassadeurs de la France, son Excellence Monsieur Vincent Guérand, à Madame l'ambassadeur de la Pologne, Madame Anna Soszańska, à l'ambassadeur de la Belgique, son Excellence Monsieur Pierre-Emmanuel Debeau, à l'ambassadeur de la Suisse, son Excellence Monsieur Louis-José Touron, et à l'ambassadeur du Maroc, son Excellence Monsieur Lassène Maouri. Monsieur l'ambassadeur Vincent Guérand, je passe la parole à vous.
Merci beaucoup, Sinead. Je suis très heureux d'être présent parmi vous ce soir. Et mes premiers mots de félicitations vont bien sûr à Claire Keegan. Bravo pour cette superbe nouvelle, ce court roman. Mais bravo également à Jacqueline Odin pour cette très belle traduction, effectivement dans une langue à la fois très claire et dépouillée. En tout cas, c'était mon impression, je crois que ça rejoint votre appréciation. Permettez-moi aussi ce soir de féliciter en un sens Sabine Westpiezer que je suis heureux de retrouver ce soir. Nous étions sur le même plateau il y a quelques semaines pour la remise des insignes de commandeur des arts et des lettres à Madame Edna O'Brien. Et donc, à l'évidence, vous choisissez excellemment vos auteurs et leurs œuvres. Et si vous me permettez également, ce soir, félicitations à ma collègue grecque, Katarina Simopoulou, à l'occasion des 200 ans de l'indépendance recouvrée de la Grèce moderne. Mais pour en revenir à vous, Claire, j'ai beaucoup aimé votre nouvelle. J'ai été particulièrement touché par son héros, son personnage principal, héros presque camusien, en fait, un héros assez modeste et déterminé je trouve, habité d'une grande bonté, une bonté simple face à cette situation si dramatique et même cruelle. Et je trouvais que cette bonté qui l'animait et qui est exprimée avec cette langue si belle et si dépouillée, comme je le disais, était particulièrement touchante et séduisante. Donc bravo, merci de nous avoir comme ceci illuminé pendant ces soirées d'hiver. Nous avons lu votre roman et je passe la parole maintenant à mes collègues. Mais encore une fois, félicitations à vous toutes.
Et maintenant, j'invite Madame l'ambassadeur, Madame Anna Soshanska, à dire quelques paroles.
Always the same problem. I'm sorry. Hello, good evening. I'm delighted to be here. Of course, I don't have to repeat. I congratulate you both, Claire and Jacqueline. What a fantastic evening. I'm very pleased to be here with you. Just wanted to say one thing, and if I may, one question to Claire, if we still have time for Q&A. Thank you, Claire, for what you've said about the children and the attitude of a particular state towards children, that it shows really the strength and the values that this state represents. I think it's very important, and you know, children, it's my favorite topic, and I also try here in Ireland to organize different events dedicated to children and women. So thank you for those words. And if I may, Claire, I know that in your life you traveled and lived abroad extensively. You spent some time in the United States, then in Wales, and then in the end you decided to come back to Ireland. And this is where your stories are set, mainly in rural Ireland, and in the period of the 80s. You referred to the 80s, but I would really love to know what is so fascinating and inspiring for you about this particular setting and this era. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'm not quite sure that I know, or that I even believe this place to be inspiring. I think I set my stories here because I have experience of the country, and I want to respond somehow to what has gone on. What has happened here matters to me. And I left because of what happened. And I've left a few times now. I find Ireland deeply conservative. And I know that we seem to be making progress. But I still find attitudes to women are deeply conservative. And I've just written another story about a misogynist, actually, which Jacqueline is translating at the moment. So I'm not sure that I get to choose what I write. I don't feel that I'm in control of that. I can put a structure on it, but I don't think you get to turn stories away. Of course, you can turn stories away by not writing them and just refusing to write them. But I'm not so sure that you get to choose your material. I think stories come along and they choose their authors, and they keep after you, maybe in the belief that you might be the right one to write this story, their story, this story. And so I wound up, you know, with a coal man. And I know nothing about a coal man in the 1980s with 5 daughters. I'm not sure why, but I suppose when it comes down to it, it matters to me what Ireland is like, what we are doing, how we are getting on, what we are not doing seems to matter to me. But I'm not saying that that couldn't be done as well or with the same or such pleasant aesthetics if it were set elsewhere. But I think I'm drawn to how people talk here. But I felt that way about the South too. When I lived in Louisiana, I felt the language of Mississippi and the language of the South and the language of, you know, people like Eudora Welty and the Southern writers, and was extraordinary. And there was a great deal of going roundabout rather than directly. And we're quite a circuitous people in the way we talk and in the way we interact and the way we go around things, you know. So I'm not sure. I'm really not sure that I would have been able to write a story of a coal man set in Pittsburgh or set in San Francisco or set in a small town in Mississippi. I don't know that I'd been able, but if that is what he turned out to be, that is where I would have had to have gone. On the pages. I don't know if that answers your question. It's the shortest answer maybe, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And now, Ambassador Monsieur Pierre Emmanuel Dubois.
Okay, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes. Yes, we can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Congratulations, Claire. Toutes mes félicitations, Jacqueline, for this well-deserved award. And thank you to all the partners in the Francophonie Festival, and especially to Literature Ireland for this activity. Claire, I was really struck by the generosity of your character. And actually, I found it fantastic to tell a story of something terrible, really difficult, through the eyes of a good man and a man of good. And I thought it was really inspiring, because I think in this world, we need stories like that, telling us that there is love and you can be loved, even though we know terrible things happen. I like the way as well how you transform a very local reality into a universal experience, actually, because I think many of us can recognize part of themselves in the character or in other persons in the book. Je voudrais féliciter la traductrice d'avoir si bien capté, je crois, l'âme de ce pays, dans lequel j'ai le plaisir immense de vivre depuis 4 ans. Je crois que c'est vraiment difficile de traduire à ce point vraiment l'intensité de cette vie relativement simple dans le sud de l'Irlande, d'une façon subtile. Et je crois que vous avez également aidé Claire Keegan à faire de cet intérieur irlandais quelque chose d'universel dans lequel il y a quelque chose pour chacun de nous. Donc, bravo. Thank you very much for sharing this lovely story with us, so well written and well translated. Congratulations.
Merci. Merci, Monsieur l'ambassadeur. Et maintenant, j'invite l'ambassadeur de la Suisse en Irlande, son Excellence Monsieur Louis-José Touran, à prendre la parole.
Oui, bonsoir, vous m'entendez?
Oui.
Oui.
Merci.
Merci. Claire Keegan and Jacqueline Odin, I'd like to congratulate you for this literary award. Small things like these is a little jewel about the delicate issue of unmarried mothers ill-treated in so-called mother and baby homes and Magdalena laundries. Claire, you treated this sensitive subject in a considerate manner. I was delighted to read your book in French. Et merci Jacqueline Odin d'en avoir donné une traduction diaphane with Irish words. I was delighted because of the subject, because it took me to the heart of Ireland, somewhere in a town with its tradition and not so many years ago. Because it brought me back to a part of my childhood, Enid Blyton being at that time my favorite reading, also for the 7 secret rather than for the famous 5, as well as Christmas preparation, in particular, making and baking pudding and biscuits. And because it helped me to escape the constraints of the current pandemic for a while. Finally, thank you for Bill Furlong's and Mrs. Wilson's generosity, which gives hope. And thank you, Claire, for all the girls like Sarah, otherwise known as Enda. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur l'ambassadeur. Et maintenant, j'appelle l'ambassadeur du Maroc en Irlande, son Excellence Monsieur Lassen Maraoui, à prendre la parole. On ne vous entend pas. We can't hear you.
Et là, vous m'entendez?
Yes. Et maintenant, oui, c'est clair. Merci.
Oui. Bonsoir Sinead, bonsoir chers amis, Excellencies. Je vais commencer tout d'abord par remercier tous ceux qui ont fait en sorte que ce rendez-vous puisse avoir lieu, même dans une période de pandémie. Alors, je commencerai par remercier mes collègues ambassadeurs qui ont fait un grand effort. Je vais aussi remercier Literature Ireland qui a toujours été à nos côtés, et essentiellement Sinead. Je vais aussi remercier son Excellence, ambassadeur Ekaterini Simopolo pour la présentation qu'elle a faite. Je tiens aussi à remercier ceux qui sont concernés par la fête ce soir, à savoir justement l'auteur, Claire Keegan, la traductrice, Jacqueline Odin, et aussi la maison d'édition représentée par Sabine. Donc, à toutes ces personnes, je dis merci. Et en même temps, je vais dire félicitations. Félicitations d'abord à l'auteur, Claire Keegan, pour ce travail excellent. À Jacqueline Odin aussi pour le travail qu'il a pu réaliser, traduisant d'une manière exceptionnelle, et aussi à la maison d'édition. Alors, ce travail, bien entendu, je savais, dans la francophonie, nous avons beaucoup de valeurs. Et pour ma part, il y a une valeur qui s'appelle le partage. Et en ce moment où on ne peut pas voyager, ce livre a voyagé au Maroc. Il a été lu par 5 auteurs, 2 femmes et 3 hommes. Et je peux rassurer l'auteur que tout le monde a choisi le livre de Claire Keegan, ce genre de petites choses. In English, I would like to, first of all, to thank all people who were involved to make this event a reality today. And I would like to especially thank my colleagues, ambassadors and their embassies, and also to thank the Literature Ireland and Sinead for the work done. And once again, congratulations to the author, Claire Keegan, and the translator, Jacqueline Odin, and also the publisher. And as I said in French, this book, in this time in which we cannot move from where we are and we are all in lockdown, the book has traveled to Morocco, and it was read by 5 authors in Morocco, very known authors, and they actually participate in my judgment. And I think all the authors who read these books picked up this book called Small Things Like This. So once again, congratulations. And I think it's very good also to see how the ambassador can share this kind of books. And for the first time, a book written by an Irish author was read by Moroccan authors. And I think that they appreciate a lot the book and the quality of this book, and also the quality of translation. Once again, congratulations to all, and we hope to read more and more about the Irish authors. I have spent 4 years here now, and I think that a lot was done with literature Ireland, who make us actually trying to dream and to see the reality in Ireland. So once again, congratulations and thank you for this, Sinead, and all my colleagues.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. All that remains for me to do is to thank you all once again. I'd like to thank the ambassadors of the Francophonie, in particular, Madame Ekaterina Simopoulou, for their words today and for organizing the prize. I'd like to thank Professor Clíona Ní Riordáin for interviewing Jacqueline and Claire so expertly. And I'd like to thank most especially and to congratulate once again Claire Keegan and Jacqueline Odin. Félicitations. Je vous encourage vivement, tous nos spectateurs ici, à lire ce roman. Et je vous dis à l'année prochaine pour une nouvelle édition du Prix littéraire des ambassadeurs de la Francophonie en Irlande. So I'm encouraging all of our listeners today, if they haven't read the book already, to go and buy it in French or in English. And we hope to see you here again this time next year for a new edition of the Prix littéraire des ambassadeurs de la Francophonie en Irlande. Merci.